Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this EU Circular Talk on circular textiles policies, implementation, challenges, and the role of the Circular Economy Act. Timing of today's Circular Talk is very good because just this morning, von Leyen, in her State of the Union speech, actually talked about the circular economy, and she said that we need to move fast on the Circular Economy Act. So it's really good that we're here to discuss textiles in that context today. My name is Lars Mortensen. I'm an expert on circular economy and textiles at the European Environment Agency. I'll be the moderator this afternoon. We're really happy to see so many of you here already. More have signed up, so I expect others to join also in the coming minutes. Before we start, let me just go through a few housekeeping rules, which is on the next slide here. So the housekeeping rules are that please feel free to use the chat function to ask questions at any time. And we'll address them during the Q&A sessions to the extent that we can. We expect many questions. Secondly, this session is being recorded and the recording will be shared afterwards on the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform website. And third, if you experience any technical issues, try leaving and rejoining the meeting or let us know in the chat and we will deal with it. So the agenda of today is as follows. After my introduction, there will be an opening remarks by Mr. Florian Marin, member of the European Economic and Social Committee. After that, we move into a panel discussion, or really two panel discussions on the implementation of textile policies. First, we will have my colleague Sana Due from the European Environment Agency talk, and after that, Luca Boniolo from the Environmental Coalition of Standards. And after that, we will have a short Q&A with them. Following that, we will bring in Estefania Jimenez Puerta from Municipal Waste Europe. And after that, Laura Olenso from European Recycling Platform. They will talk a lot about the recycling aspects of this, and we will have a Q&A with them. After that, we move on to the second part of this afternoon, which will be a presentation on the Waste Framework Directive and ongoing work on textiles by Vincenzo Gente from the European Commission, DG Environment. He will also talk about the links to the Circular Economy Act, of course. And then the closing remarks will be made by Thomas Allmann, the Reuse Vice President and Director of Fairverto. So with that, I would like to give the floor to you, Florian, a member of the European Economic and Social Committee, for your welcoming remarks. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Lars, for giving me the floor. It's an honor for me to be here with you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, but also dear friends. As you have already mentioned, Lars, my name is Florian Marin, and I have the privilege of serving as a member of the European Economic and Social Committee. Today, I speak not just as a representative of an institution, but as someone who deeply believes in the power of collective action and shared responsibility, and of course, in our sustainable and circular future. European Economic and Social Committee, for the ones which are not familiar with our committee, it's an advisory body that brings together civil society, stakeholders, but also it's providing advice to the EU legislator and it is contributing to the discussion on a broad range of topics. As you may already know, European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, it is a joint initiative between the European Commission and our committee. It serves as a vital hub to advance circular economy practices across Europe by connecting different stakeholders, of course, sharing knowledge and breaking down barriers to sustainable transformation. I have to say that this platform is not just a policy tool. It's a living community, a place where ideas become action, and where hope for a better future is translated into real, concrete, but also measurable change. At the European Economic and Social Committee, we have already underlined the importance of these issues in our last opinion, which is dealing with revision of the EU Waste Framework Directive. We're highlighting in this opinion that the textile waste must be treated as a priority for the European Union. Unused textile are not only lost resources, they also pose a serious environmental challenge. This is why at the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, we stress that the future directive must give a greater priority to waste prevention Of course, eco-design and improved recycling, helping us to reduce the amount of waste, which is still continuing to be a problem in the EU. Every discarded piece of clothing tells a story, not just of waste, but of missed opportunity and of the need for a new way forward. We must move beyond treating waste. We must embrace prevention, eco-design, and smarter recycling as the main pillar of a truly circular economy. The strength of the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform lies in its collaborative spirit. We often describe it as a network of networks. Why? Because it is bringing together businesses, NGOs, research institutions, social partners, public authorities, but also consumer organizations. And it is creating a unique space where diverse voices can come together to innovate and to implement circular solutions. In these connections that we find the courage to innovate and the wisdom to lead. Today's EU Circular Talk is approaching circular textile policies from the point of view of implementation challenges, but also the role of the Circular Economy Act. It is a chance to focus on how circular principles can guide the implementation of the Circular Economy Act and to identify, of course, to address possible policy loopholes. Today we'll have more than a discussion. It is my belief. It will be a call to action. It's a moment to reflect on what we have achieved, to confront the gaps that remain, but also to reaffirm our commitment to a Europe that leads by example. And what a powerful moment this is. As the final EU Circular Talk under the current mandate, I'm deeply moved to see that over 700 people have registered. This is not just a number. From my point of view, it's a statement of the urgency of what the shared belief that we can and we must do better. To each one of you, which are with us today, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your ideas and for your commitment to build a circular economy that works for the people and the planet. Let's make this conversation count. Thank you, and let's begin.
Thank you so much, Florian, for these really important words. I don't think we can underestimate the power of the stakeholder platform, what difference it has made over the years in enabling all these discussions on the circular economy. And we can just see that by the amount of people here. We are 250 people here gathered for 1.5 hours in the afternoon, and that is really, really crucial. So thanks a lot to you for enabling that. With that, I would like to move on to the first panel discussion, where we have first Sana Due and then Luca Boniolo. And I'll start with you, Sana, my colleague. I have 3 questions for you. The first one is, what patterns do we observe in the textile consumption, in the pressures that they create to environment and climate, and on the generation of the textiles waste in the EU? And I know you're going to show some slides with some of the recent tendencies from the EEA. Please go ahead, Sana.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lars. And maybe I can have the slides here. It's nice to be here. I'm Sana Due. I work with Lars at the European Environment Agency. So let's go to the first slide to answer the question here. So how much do we consume on textile? Well, it's quite a lot. It's around 19 kilo per person per year. That's our latest number, 2022, up from 17 kilo per person from 2019. Some of this is clothing, around 8 kilo. We have household textiles, and then we have shoes. We have not included rugs or industrial textiles in these numbers. And how much is this? Well, if you imagine that you pack a large suitcase full of clothes, that's how much we consume every year per person in the EU. I can add here that around 11% of this comes now from online shopping, and that number has doubled since 2010. All right, next slide, please. So if we go back to 2010 to see the development, we can see that it hasn't increased that much. Although slight increase, and we had a dip 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, and it seems like it's going up quite sharply, but we don't know yet. We will have new numbers later this year to see if this trend continues. It also, we spend the same share of our income, around 5% annually, on textiles, so that hasn't changed much either. And next slide, please. Moving on to the climate and environmental pressures from our textile consumption in the EU 27. So when we look into that and compare it with other consumption categories, 12 consumption categories, textiles ends up at number 5 in terms of impact. And for example, what we look at is greenhouse gas emissions. Every European or EU member state member emits around 350 kilo greenhouse gases just because of the clothes consumption or textile consumption. And that's around the same as driving in a petrol car 1,800 kilometers, to make a comparison. If we look at the raw material use, most of that is being extracted or produced outside EU, only 30% in the EU. And we contribute each person with around 520 kilo per person a year. Other impact categories are, of course, water use, land use. We have the problem with microplastics and chemicals, especially PFAS. So having looked at this, it's very important that we close these loops. So we reduce the demand for extraction of new natural resources and also reduce the pressures. So where are we today? So next slide, please. Looking at the waste. Well, doesn't look that good, right? So 16 kilo per person is wasted every year. So out of this 19 kilo, maybe we store, say 3, but 16 kilos are being wasted. This number has been almost the same since we started measuring this 2016. If we look here, 80% comes from post-consumer textiles and the rest are from industry. The black ones is the dark blue ones is textile waste separately collected in 2022 here. It was around 15% that we capture of this resource. The rest is ending up in mixed municipal solid waste, which goes into incineration or landfill, and it's a missed opportunity for recycling or reuse, which are the more preferable options from a resource use perspective. This varies, though, across member states. Like, for example, Belgium, Luxembourg, they have capture rates of around 50% because they already have legislation in place. Other countries are more around, almost even zero, but on average, 15%. So 85% goes into incineration and landfill. Next slide, please. We also export collected textiles, and since 2000, this amount has tripled. This up to 1.4 million tons in 2023, mostly going to the African and Asian region. And it follows a very complex pattern with resorting, re-export, recycling, reuse. It seems like most recycling is happening in the Asian region with often downcycling, industrial rags, insulation material, and so on. Some is re-exported to African region where reuse is more common, but also that it ends up in landfills, illegal dump sites, or even open fires. But having said that, this is an area where we have a knowledge gap and we need to know more of the fate of these textiles. And then, Lars, I think I answered your first question, hopefully. Anything else you wanted?
No, thank you so much, Sanna. That's very clear with all these numbers that we published earlier this year. I think it's quite remarkable to see that we actually so far only collect 4 of those kilos. So there's a lot of work still to be done. My second question would be to you, Sanna, with all these trends, to which extent are they already affected by policies, or do you more think they will be affected by all the policies being put in place right now as part of the implementation of the EU strategy on textiles?
Yeah, exactly. So next slide, please. So the main policy, as we all know here, maybe, is the EU strategy on circular and sustainable textiles, where we say that all textiles should be durable, repairable, recyclable. It's very important. Without that, we cannot have a circular economy, of course. And also that we will try to aim for that fast fashion is out of fashion. Consumers should benefit from longer use and multiple use and high quality textiles. And then profitable reuse and repair services should be available, should also be the socially preferred option. We can link this to the competitive and resilient innovative textile sector, where we also want the producer to take responsibility for the products along the whole value chain, also when it becomes waste, and use it again in new products. And so the aim is to have the norm that you repair, you have your clothes for a long time, and we have sufficient capacity for recycling and minimal incineration. I should add here that our assessment showed last year that we lack both sorting and recycling capacity in the European Union. For these 7 million tons of textile waste, we currently only have capacity to sort for around 1.5 million. Anyway, so this is the strategy and the vision. And next slide, please. It has already, actually go back, please. So can go back. No, the previous one, I'm very sorry. Yeah, this one. It says, next one, policies. Sorry, my mistake. So this has already been, yeah, this one, been translated into concrete policy regulation like the ESPR, which has textile as a priority fraction. And we have the extended producer responsibility, the separate collection of textiles, and also the waste shipment regulation. So we can see that all these legislation are really targeting to achieve this vision. But of course, we will only reach this one if it is being implemented in an ambitious way in the member states. And that we will have to see going forward.
Thank you, Sanna. So you talked about the trends and you outlined the strategy for us and all these policies being put in place. So what do you think? You know, it's no secret we're not seeing such a rapid improvement. What do you think are the main bottlenecks for achieving circularity in the textile sector?
Yes. The main bottlenecks is a little negative. We can also see the main, possibilities here is first, the design and production. We have to get it right. A recent study from Denmark here, looking at the first, we started collecting, I live in Copenhagen, so we started collecting textile waste here, and they analyzed it at Danish Technical University. They could see that 36% of the textile waste intended for recycling had to be incinerated. And over 50% had these additions to it or was complicated material that could not be recycled at all, or over 50%. And the actual fiber-to-fiber recycling that was possible with the textiles put on the Danish market was less than 2%. So we need to get the design and the production right. Otherwise, we will never achieve a circular economy or reduce the pressures. Secondly, collection and sorting capacity needs to be scaled up. The systems are underdeveloped, as we show in the report from last year, and we're missing the high quality infrastructure. And what we heard earlier when Florian's in the beginning, like the prevention, the reuse part. So that needs to be work more on that. Textile recycling still at a pilot stage. It has not been scaled due to many reasons, which I think we will discuss later today. The business models that prevails is still fast fashion. Virgin fibers are cheaper than recycled. This also affects that the recycling technologies are not being scaled. So these are linked together here. Something that has to be addressed is the overconsumption. It's a little bit the elephant in the room also. Because although if we have efficiency gains in the textile production or more recycling, these will be offset by increasing overall volumes. So that will limit the overall net benefit for the environment. So we cannot only address increased recycling and collection, we need to look at demand side policies and behaviors. And finally, it's a global supply chain. So major impacts is happening outside the EU, also legislation that we have a limited regulatory reach. So without addressing these, the transition to circular economy will remain slow, but if we address these, we can make it happen. I think that.
Thank you so much, Sanna, for being so clear on what is actually needed. And this last slide here is where more information can be found about what Sanna said. It really shows, Sanna, that you've worked in this field for so long. I remember the reports from the Nordic Ministerial Council putting textiles on the agenda, I don't know, back 15 years ago, and it has actually taken quite a while to get where we are now with a lot of policies coming in. So I think that's quite promising, but with a lot of hard work to be done. I would now like to welcome Luca Boniolo from ECOS. Luca, you're here, right? I would like to ask you, yes, you are. Good to see you. I would like to ask you two questions. The first one, Luca, is are the current eco-design and these other upcoming policies for textiles, are these sufficient to address the challenges in the textile system, you think?
Thank you for having me here. And I must admit that I might sometimes repeat what just Sana said, and I think it was like a very interesting and complete description and touches upon many of the points actually that I wanted to raise. But as we heard, the textile products and sector has a serious ecological footprint at all stages. And the main objectives of the EU policy action should be to bring the textile sector back within the planetary boundaries. And to do that, we need different but complementary policies that look at textile products and how they are produced, textile waste and how it is managed, and the textile system as a whole, including the business model of companies. And because, as Sanna mentioned, even if the environmental impact of a single textile product were to be reduced, then overall the planetary boundaries might be surpassed anyway if we add up all the impact of the too many new products that are currently sold in the EU. The EU set their vision of the textile sector in the strategy of for sustainable circular textiles, and we see these concepts. We can find them in the strategy. So, first of all, measures on sustainable production and sustainable consumption. Clearly, the eco-design regulation here is the centerpiece. And the regulation, as you know, enables the Commission to adopt minimum requirements for products that are sold in the EU, regardless of where the manufacturer is based. And so this regulation could ensure that products are sustainable by design and eliminate the worst performing ones. But really much will depend on the level of ambitions of those final requirements. They are currently being discussed and analyzed. So we are actually a bit concerned recently that the requirements will only have a narrow scope. So ultimately, if they will deliver and address the challenges, will ultimately also depend on the level of ambition. When it comes to measures that address challenges linked to the textile waste and to ensure that producers are responsible for the products along the value chain, then for certainly we must list the revised targeted revision of the Waste Framework Directive that was also voted yesterday in the European Parliament, and it contains a very important piece of the puzzle, which is the mandatory EPR schemes in the different member states for textiles. We hope that that will be swiftly implemented with fees that are high enough also to cover all the true costs that are linked to managing textiles. And it will actually also therefore make a difference based on how it is modulated, not just linked to the sustainability performance of the product itself, but also to the practices that business put in place that might discourage a long life of the product. We have also a revised waste shipment regulation that will start applying in 2027, and then the waste criteria that will be adopted by the end of the year. So when it comes to the waste part, I think that overall I'm a bit more hopeful, but really much it depends on the implementation of this. And finally, the strategy also mentioned that they wanted to make fast fashion out of fashion, and wanted to make reuse and repair services widely available and economically profitable. I think that the action of the European policymakers lacks a bit behind. We have in the ESPR a ban on the destruction of unsold clothing and footwear, which is a very good step forward. However, the Commission will soon adopt also exceptions to this ban, and with the risk of potentially still enabling the status quo. And also there is the risk that ultimately companies will pass down to other operators in the value chain their unsold good without really reevaluating the number of products that they place on the market. For instance, if they give them to outlets or to online marketplaces. Ultimately, what we really need is also a change in the business model, and at the same time, really making circular business model more attractive, more competitive, also especially actually from a financial perspective. And I would just wanted to mention briefly a report that we have did on this, where we have a list of recommendations for that. So I will invite all the people to go and check it out.
Thanks very much, Luca. I think you did a really tour de force into all the policies on the table and actually the importance of the implementation of getting things right, to look at exceptions and all that. And of course, this is something that is happening now, so it's important to keep a close eye on. But that leads me to my second question to you, which is basically how you think that the ESPR implementation, together with the Circular Economy Act, which it sounded on von Leyen yesterday may come sooner than we have expected. How will that help bridge these gaps between the policies we need, you think?
Yeah, as I mentioned, eco-design regulation truly has the potential to be a transformative policy, but really it will depend on the level of ambitions of the final requirement. And indeed, it really also depends on the scope of this, if they will just look at, for instance, durability, or if they will look also on how to addressing pollution and resource use in the supply chain. And I would like to also mention specifically microplastic release. And I mentioned that because we have seen a gradual rolling back in terms of a level of ambition during the time. The Textile strategy promised a specific initiative to address the unintentional release of microplastics from the textile product. And eventually what we have currently now is just an informative brochure on how to address microplastics, which is not a concrete action so far. We're hearing and we're seeing actually that there will be filters in washing machines, but for us, we believe that might not be enough. We need to address also root causes on this topic. So we really hope that at least in the context of eco-design, microplastics release will be addressed. And when we think about the circular economy, going to the Circular Economy Act, our immediate focus is predominantly on closing the loop. But closing the loop is just one of the actions to achieve a truly circular, safe and sustainable textile industry. We also need to narrow the resource flows and slow down the resource loop, while at the same time addressing waste and pollution of the textile sector. All of these are part of the principles of a circular economy. So when we first heard about the Circular Economy Act, we hoped that actually it would address all the market failures that are, linked to why we don't manage to get that circular economy yet. And for examples, we thought of measures and targets to reduce the material consumption in the EU, or measures to make circular business models more competitive, like financial incentives and support compared to the linear ones. But unfortunately, it really seems that the Circular Economy Act will just focus on the lower tiers of a circular economy. And we kind of think that maybe it would have been better to call it the EU Recycling Act in a way. But while I do not think that all our problems and challenges of the sector will be solved by recycling our problems away, I do think that the Act offers opportunity, and we will try to leverage those. For example, expanding and harmonizing the scope of activities that are covered by the EPR schemes. And making sure that those activities are really financed through them, and their true cost is truly reflected and paid for within the schemes.
So Luca, you should wrap up, so we have time for the questions as well. Huh?
Yeah. Please, I just finished that.
Yes.
And so we also need to make sure that the Circular Economy Act is coherent with other legislation like the eco-design. Because if the Commission also wants to reinforce the single market of waste and secondary raw material, then we should also make sure that textiles are recyclable in the first place, and that indeed we focus on the biggest problem when it comes to textile waste is also the post-consumer share of the textile waste. And yeah, that was my conclusion.
Thanks very much, Luca. I would like to bring Sana back in for the question and answer session. We have received a lot of questions before the event. We're also getting a lot of questions in the chat. Marie-Jeanne is trying to help me keep an overview of that, and we're selecting a few of those to ask because we can't bring everybody in with so many people here. But I would like to, many of the questions are around fast fashion, overproduction, overconsumption. So I'd like to ask you, do you think the current policies are sufficient to address overproduction, overconsumption, or do you think something else is needed? Maybe we start with you, Sana.
Okay, thank you, Lars. No, I don't think they are sufficient, although they are very ambitious. So when it comes to overconsumption or curbing fast fashion, I think it's interesting what France has done there as part of their EPR, where they look at if a garment or a textile ends up very fast in the waste system, they have a higher fee, which is one way to start to addressing this fast fashion challenge, I would say. When it comes to demand side measures, we're actually starting to look into at the EA now this year to see what are countries doing in this area, and are there any promising initiatives. And I know that some countries have developed targets to actually limit the use of resources for different consumption sectors, for example, the Netherlands and others. But no, I think we have, it's good what we're doing, but there is much more work left to address this challenge.
Thanks a lot, Sana. Luca, what do you think?
Indeed, I agree with this assessment. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think that the current focus of the EU is really more on reducing the impact of a single product through the eco-design, but we really also need a focus on the system change and the policies that are currently on the table, like for instance, the banning on the destruction of unsold goods can be helpful, but I fear that the problem will just pass along to other operators and will not really also be addressed by those operators that are actually contributing to generating this large amount of products. So we would rather see also some first of all support for those operators that are indeed trying to propose some ways of generating income that is not linked to the extraction of new resources and the production of new products, which is, circular business model, for instance. But generally speaking, at least I think we should start, having some targets of, okay, what is the overall material consumption that we should have in Europe, and to see ultimately if the policies that we have in place are sufficient, or if we should at least be more ambitious in terms of the system change.
Thanks very much, Luca. And I want to bring in Marie-Jeanne Gardner from Reuse. She's been preparing all of this and has been monitoring all the questions. I believe you have a question first for Sana, right? Is that correct?
Yes, actually, Luca did a perfect transition to this question with the system change, because the question for both of you is, what are the most promising opportunities for circularity in the textile sector over the next few years? So looking at the bright side, what are the opportunities to have a circular textile sector?
I can say something quickly there. So I think really if we have an ambitious and successful implementation of the ESPR directive here, we could have more textiles that are actually possible to recycle. I think that's really, really important. Another is, of course, to develop the systems, the collection system, so it enables high quality recycling and reuse. So that's another one. And then also strengthen the market for recycled materials. Very important. Right now, it's not working, as we all are aware of if we read the news. So and maybe by having more requirements of using recycled material in new products. So I think these three are very important. I don't know any special circular economy model that I could, say this is really promising. Unfortunately, I wish I could, but of course, we also have to strengthen the circular economy business models, and we are also looking into that in a project that Lars is leading this year. I think it's going to be published soon, right, Lars?
Early next year, we'll publish that.
Early next year, yeah, with promising business models. So we will know more then.
And thank also to you, Luca, on the same question, please.
Yeah, so I will not focus again on the eco design because Sana already mentioned that, but I think that one interesting opportunity really is all now the member states will need to set up their different EPR schemes. So it's really also an opportunity for all the operators that do something that is related to textiles and trying to prolong their life of textiles and manage also the ways in terms of reuse and repairs and preparation for use, etc., to look at these opportunities and to therefore also talk with the authorities in a different, at local levels or national levels, etc., to try and get some support and some funding from these EPR schemes, from their operations, to make sure that eventually they can and will be able to contribute to the circular economy also by receiving some fundings that should come from the producers that put the products on the market in the first place.
Thanks very much, Luca. Thanks very much, Sana. Thanks to both of you. You both know the textile trends and the policies inside out. So I think we're quite fortunate to hear your opinions and also your call for continuing ambitious in this area, which I think is really important. We will now move on to the second part of the panel, where we're going to dig a bit deeper into the waste side, the recycling side. So we have Estefania Jimenez Puerta from Municipal Waste Europe. Hope the pronunciation was okay. And after that, we have Laura Alonso from European Recycling Platform. But maybe I'll start with you, Estefania. Welcome on board. Really great to have you here. So my question to you is, what challenges and opportunities do public waste management face in the implementation of the extended producer responsibility schemes on textiles? A big question, many challenges, I'm sure. But please tell us your findings and your overall thinking on this. This is really important.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the organizers for the opportunity to speak here. 3 minutes is a bit short for this big question, but I would like to address 3 main points or areas that are very important for us. Or maybe I should clarify that I represent public responsibility for municipal waste management. So the companies I represent are active in collection, in separate collection. So the first point is a mismatch. So there is a mismatch between the legal obligation for the separate collection of textiles, January 2025, it's already, the deadline is already behind us, and the entry into force of the obligation for member states to establish EPR schemes. So I believe it will be more or less in 2028, if I'm not mistaken. So we have 3 years of gap, and this is a financial gap. It also causes legal uncertainty. But it's mainly a financial gap because to be able to fulfill with this legal obligation for separate collection, municipalities and their operators working on their behalf has been invested in the infrastructure, in the communication strategy to engage with the citizens in the system. And we know that the latest amendments to the Waste Framework Directive don't guarantee that these investments already made will be covered by EPR, the EPR schemes in future. So the first problem, I would say, or I wouldn't say challenge, but at least a problem, is this financial gap. And actually this is discouraging municipalities also to well, discourage. They are not, they cannot afford to put this investment there without the support of the EPR. Second point is related to the insufficient sorting and recycling capacity we have today, as Sana mentioned this before. And this is a challenge or a problem for municipalities and the collectors, because separate collection is not enough. We need sorting and recycling capacity for the separate collection to make sense, you know. And the problem here also is that the existing capacity, it's insufficient, but the existing capacity is going to bankruptcy. The sorters and recyclers are shutting down. And the big question is if the EPR schemes, once they are implemented in future, they are supposed to support this recycling and sorting capacity, even to help to grow this capacity. But for the recyclers and sorters that we have today, maybe this funding will arrive too late. And then the third point is the governance of the EPR scheme. So there is no harmonized understanding and implementation of how the EPR schemes should be designed and actually implemented. And here I have two main points for me, key to make EPR schemes really well designed and functioning. And is one is that all actors that are relevant, and in particular municipalities, the collectors, operators, the reuse actors like social enterprises, should be decision-making power in the design of the EPR schemes, because we know that very often the producer responsibility organizations that are, of course, a key player in the EPR scheme, they are often overpowered and they decide themselves, or they are too much empowered to decide on, in particular, on the necessary cost. So very often, as Luca mentioned before, the true cost of separate collection, sorting, etc., are not reflected in the cost coverage that come from the EPR scheme. So these actors should be also have decision-making power. And second point here, and I finished, the PRO. Now it's possible in the Waste Framework Directive allows to have competing PROs, even for-profit PROs, producer responsibility organization. And we see this is very worrying, because for-profit PROs tend to cherry pick the fractions that are more valuable. They, even if there are more than one PRO, they compete to get more members, to lower their fees at the expense of the efficiency of the system. So this is actually, this competition is actually counterproductive for the circular goals we want to achieve. So unfortunately, this is a challenge and a problem of a lack of harmonization of EPR governance.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Yeah, you went a bit over time, but I do think that was important. No, because you're really pointing to some really serious issues here. Right? There's a very, very serious finance challenge, which is really, really clear, which we hope EPR can solve to a certain extent. And in time, huge sorting, recycling challenge as well, where the investment's going to come from. You know, basically, we've chosen to make the collection and then to have that trigger all the other things, but we need to really work very, very hard to make that happen also with the governance. And so there's a lot of challenges in there, and I think it's important to highlight this and to put pressure on the system to make it happen. I have one more question to you, but I would like to ask you to answer that quite quickly because we don't have too much time. And that is, of course, that the EPR scheme will provide a lot of financing, but will it also contribute to the prevention of the waste in the first place?
Well, I support what Luca said before. So I think Luca answered this question regarding to the eco-modulated fees and how the eco-modulated fees can actually help to waste prevention. Also, preparation for reuse is a waste treatment that is supposed to be covered also financially by and supported by the EPR schemes, and it's preparation for reuse is kind of prevention at the second stage, right? But I would say, to answer quickly to your question, is that EPR is not enough, and if we really want to tackle the waste generation problem, we need to use other consumer and fiscal instruments. And for example, I would suggest restrictions on the advertising that is actually stimulating the consumption of poor quality products that are flooding our market, filling in our incinerators, as Sana said before, and landfills, because they are simply toxic, non-reusable and non-recyclable. So I hope the Circular Economy Act will go deeper in hitting the roots of the waste generation problem. EPR is not enough.
Thank you so much. The role of marketing is important, but also influencers, social media, all these factors that affect our consumption, of course. So with that, I want to bring in Laura Alonso from the European Recycling Platform. So welcome, Laura. You're here, right? Let me see if I can see you among these almost 300 people we have. Are you here, Laura? Yes?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Hi,
good.
everyone.
So I have two questions for you. First question is, what do you think the priorities to consider are when establishing a national EPR scheme for textiles? Because all the countries have to establish these national schemes. So what is important in that context?
Yes, well, thanks for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to have here the previous presenters and colleagues. I'm going to talk in general, of course, because we all know that then the different member states can make different adaptations when implemented the directives or the regulations from the EU in certain aspects. So for us, what will be the priorities when we are establishing a national EPR? Apart, of course, of taking into account the legal statements and obligations that EPR has to comply with, it will be first collaboration. I believe, and we believe, in an open collaboration with all the different stakeholders and the different agents, especially in sectors where there is already solutions, business, social enterprise that have been dealing with this waste. So it's not like starting from zero, let's say, with a new challenge. We believe in the inclusion of other agents to take into account the different interests to ensure the success at the end of the day of the implementation of the recycling collection obligations of the producers. On second place, I will say it really matters how the legislation is finally developed and published. So the final texts of the legislation, we need effective laws, clear laws with realistic targets, because the economical element is a key element if we really want to achieve in a change of model into a circular economy. So it's as important as environmental and social aspects. I will say that also to be efficient in an economical or aspect of it, in the economical aspect is also needs to be factored into the legislation. And also the legislation needs to be aware, of course, as we all need and want ambitious targets if we want to really see a change and have an impact. But we need to be aware of the current market situation, so not to set unrealistic challenges just for the matter of setting them up. For us, it's also important to have a level playing field. We believe that especially in competitive environments where there will be multiple EPRs, everyone needs to play with the same rules. So in terms of enforcement, sanctions, etc., everyone has to be, as I said before, following the same rules to ensure the right competition rules are in place and avoid unfair competition against the different players. Also, for us, the data and the transparency are very important. So we need to be very careful about the data. So we need to know exactly where we are right now. So make the right analysis, have the transparency on the data, for example, to be declared by producers for previous years, to be able to make the right estimations of the existing volumes or the potential existing volumes of recycling, so that when we are measuring the achievement of the different objectives of the collecting, reuse, preparation for reuse targets, we are really able to measure and to control them. And overall, I would say that will be the 4 key priorities.
Thanks very much for being so clear on the priorities. Of course, the level playing field is crucial. That is very, very clear. Can you say something? I think it's fair to say that there is a crisis in the second-hand market, both in Europe but also worldwide. Do you think the establishment of these EPR schemes can solve that, or do you think we need more? Or to which extent can it solve it, do you think?
Well, for me, coming to your question, for me, it's not only a crisis, but a complete change of the existing model and the structures that we know as of today. So I think it's clear, and from the previous interventions, I think that we could all agree that we are living a change of the model globally, not just in the EU. And of course, one of the causes or the results of that change of model is the existing crisis that we are facing, or that the system is facing. EPR, in my opinion, will not solve all the problems. I hope it could be, but I don't think it will be realistic to expect that. I think that this change of model, it implies that the existing solutions, the existing textile markets, companies and processes will need to change and will need to adapt. But also not only the existing agents or active agents, if we want in this model, but also the consumers' behavior, the perception of reuse that is currently on the mind of the consumers. We need to also change that way of perceiving the reused textiles. So overall, for me, that means rethinking how we are doing things right now, or how things have been done until now. And of course, this transition from one model to a new one will mean a major adaptation from all sizes and all agents, and it will not, unfortunately, it will not be really realistic to expect that to happen in a couple of years. I hope I'm wrong and that comes sooner. But I think that we need to be aware that industry and technology developments sometimes take time to do the necessary investments, the necessary research and development, etc. So, for example, to create new infrastructures for sorting, a new chemical recycling treatment plant, we need, as well as investment, time. So for us, in order to address this key and massive change, Europe needs to have a detailed plan of action with clear goals, and of course with the support and funding mechanisms to make it happen.
We're running out of time, Laura, so I need you to wrap up. So we have time for at least one question to each of you. So
okay, so just to finalize from my side, for me, the EPR is just a piece of this new puzzle. So we are here to help with the existing, especially with existing inefficiencies. So, for example, textiles that are not able to be recycled or reused nowadays. Also, producer responsibility needs to support and enhance all the necessary developments by financing investments in collection, sorting, treatment solutions. For example, to support.
I think we have to stop there, because otherwise other speakers will lose time. So I would like to move on to the question and answer. But before doing that, I would actually like to ask all the speakers to look at the questions in the chat. There's so many questions, so many comments coming in. To the extent you can react to that and answer that, I think it'll be very, very helpful. I can see a lot of people are already doing that. So I think that's important. And then while you look at that and listen at the same time, I'd like to ask Marie-Jeanne to bring up a question. We're only going to have time for one question, but you found a really interesting question, I think. So please go ahead, Marie-Jeanne.
Yeah, so one question that actually came twice was about the role of existing actors and how they will collaborate with future EPR schemes. And so the question for Estefania and Laura is, how can EPR schemes maintain the relationship, for example, between municipalities and social actors that are really well positioned in certain member states? And so how will future EPR schemes take this into consideration?
Thanks, Marie-Jeanne. So we start with Estefania and then Laura. You have to be a bit brief, I'm afraid, but so what do you think of the existing players there?
Yes, I'm aware as well of these collaborations, and I think they should remain, and they are very valuable from a social and environmental point of view. And I think now with the new amendments to the Waste Framework Directive, the role of the social enterprises and the municipalities and waste operators are recognized as a key players in the EPR scheme. So I think this is reinforced now in the Waste Framework Directive. It's one of the good news of the revision, I think.
Thank you. And we'll hear very much about that in a few minutes from Vincenzo. Laura, your perspective on this, please.
Yes, very shortly. As Stefania was saying, there are already examples in another type of waste of former collaborations set up between compliance schemes and municipal authorities or collection points, and also with social enterprise. For example, in Spain, it's quite common to have what is called agreements. It's legal agreements set up to define the collaboration, the way to collaborate, and to make it more efficient for both sides.
Thank you so much. So thanks both of you. You will see also a lot of comments in the chat, so maybe it's a good time for you to have a look at those. And with those, what I would like to welcome Vincenzo Gente from the European Commission, DG Environment, the Waste and Resource Unit. Welcome, Vincenzo. It's really, really great to have you here. I know a lot of the people who've signed up are here to hear what comes from you, from the Commission. The timing is really, really good, since we had the Waste Framework Directive voted in Parliament yesterday, and I think we're only waiting for the official journal now, but you can tell us all about that. So my first question to you is basically, since it has been voted, what is to be expected now? What do the member countries have to do? What do all the actors have to do? Please give us the best overview you can. I know you know this probably better than anybody else.
Thank you for the invitation and for the lively discussions that could follow in the meantime. Regarding the targeted revision of the Waste Framework Directive, as you said, as I guess many people in the meeting know, yesterday the Parliament gave the final green light to the adoption of the amending directive. So now what we have to expect is that the amending directive will be signed by Council and Parliament and then published in the official journal. This should happen in beginning of October, the publication, and after 20 days from the publication, it will enter into force. So at the moment, member states will have to step in because they will have to transpose the provisions that are included in the targeted revision of the Waste Framework Directive into national laws. And they will have 20 months from the entry into force of the amending directive to transpose it into national laws. As there's already been also pledged by the Commissioner for the Environment, Roswell, to the Council, we hope the Member States will make their best to even transpose earlier than the deadline this amending directive, because we see how the textile sector and member states and tech can be helped by the establishment of extended producer responsibility for textile, which whose deadline to be set up is 30 months after the entry into force of the amending directive. So there are two main deadlines. One is for the transposition, 20 months after entry into force, and one is for setting up the extended producer responsibility national level, which is 30 months after the entry into force. What does this mean? It means that member states will have to look at the provisions that are in the Waste Framework Directive, which in my view are quite clear in terms of objectives, in terms of activities that have to be financed through the EPR schemes and actors to be involved. This is very important because with this directive, we tried with the instruments we had to harmonize as much as possible the EPR scheme for textile. I know that there are not too many differences between member states or what is financed by EPR schemes and what is not in the list of activities that should be financed. Also, these activities and the financial contribution that will be collected should be used to set up an effective waste treatment in member states. So they should not be excess too high, but they should ensure that the system it will work in an effective way in line with the Waste Framework Directive and the waste hierarchy. On the other side, there are also other activities that are there that are linked to the waste management, which are, for example, support to information campaign on sustainable products, and also on research development on recycling activities. Another important aspect that members have to look at is to make sure that they entrust producer responsibility organizations, which, different from other EPR schemes, are mandatory for textile. So the fulfillment of the EPR obligation by a single producer are not included in this directive, but they have to do it collectively via PROs. So this is also an important aspect. This is for member states what they have to do in terms of EPR's obligation, but there are also other obligations that are not strictly linked to EPRs. Like, for example, there is now a clear understanding of what is waste textile and what is supposed to be textile that is fit for use. So now, according to the new directive, all separately collected textile will be considered as waste. And this is very important also to address one of the main issues that we have with second-hand textiles, so meaning the shipment out of waste textile as disguised as used textile, is that to ship textile that is really used textile, it has to first undergo a sorting process, and there's to be a statement that the textile has been sorted according to which criteria, in order that it is sure that what is contained in the bales to be shipped contain used textile, or textile that is assessed as fit for use, I should say. And it's also the sorting criteria like color, size, kinds of clothes for which seasons, and so on. This is strictly linked to another activity, another initiative of the, that we put in place last year, which is the waste shipment regulation. So in case there is no such pre-sorting activity for textile that is separately collected, then everything falls under the waste shipment regulation, because the textile should be treated as waste. So this is a little bit the main obligations for member states. I don't know if I have time, because I can also report a little bit on what the Commission in the meantime will be doing. And there are two main aspects that I would like to touch upon. One is the eco-modulation of DPR fees, and the other one is the end-of-waste criteria for textile waste. So the waste from a directive includes the possibility for PROs to eco-modulate the fees for EPRs on the basis of sustainable criteria that will be set under the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. There will be a delegated act on this, and following the delegated act, we will we will work on an implementing act for setting the methodology for the eco-modulation of PR fees. But there is also another aspect that was introduced during the discussion with the co-legislator, is that in these implementing acts, we might also look at other aspects like producer practices that are leading to over-generation of waste, and this can be linked also to the concept of ultra and fast fashion. So this is a way we try to address, in a way, business models and also the design of products, because the more sustainable, more circular the products are designed, then the lower should be the fees that producer will pay for these products. And the other initiatives ongoing is about end-of-waste criteria for textile. The colleagues on the JRC are working on it, and their report should be ready by the end of the year. The report follows the waste framework directive, because there will be two endpoints for end-of-waste. One is about textile that is assessed as fit for use, and another point is about recycling, after recycling of the textile. After the report of the JRC, we will work for an implementing act to adopt as soon as possible an implementing act to make sure that these end-of-waste criteria are set in the law and apply in a uniform way in all member states. And with this, I close here.
Thanks very much, Vincenzo, for a really great overview of what is happening in a very technical field. A lot of things to be done, a lot of obligations. There's already a lot of questions in the chat. We'll come back to that. But before we come back to that, I would like to ask you, about the Circular Economy Act. I know that, it's not out yet, so you can't say too much. Of course, the Commission has said something beforehand about what ambitions for the Act is, and it seems like with von Lein's words today that maybe it's being pushed forward a bit. We don't know. Still to be seen. But can you say something about, will the Circular Economy Act, is it likely to contain something specifically about textiles, or other things that will affect textiles and act in combination with all these policies being put in place right now?
Thank you, Lars. In fact, yes, I heard that our president asked us to hurry up for the adoption of the Circular Economy Act. So I don't know now exactly. I cannot tell you which going to be the deadline for the adoption of the Act, to be seen, as you said. And what I can say that, and I would also invite all the people that are now in the meeting, is to look at the open public consultation that has been published beginning of August, if I'm not wrong, and it's going to be open until the 6th of November. Because there, with the call up for evidence and the public consultation, you can see what what are expected to be the initiatives that will fall under the Circular Economy Act. For the time being, I cannot say that there is something really specific, specifically addressing textiles. The only clear waste stream that we are going to address is waste from electronic equipment, because that's also is part of the Circular Economy Act. But I can say, and if you read the questions that are in the open public consultation, there are some general rules that might be of interest of or be affecting the textile sector and textile waste. I can think of EPRs, for example. We are looking at how to better harmonize EPRs in the EU, or end of waste criteria, because also there we are looking at a possible way to simplify the procedure to adopt EU-wide end of waste criteria, because we know it takes quite a lot of time, and so we would like to see if there are ways on how this would be possible to simplify. And it might also be relevant, some of the actions that we think of including the Circular Economy, which is also linked to public procurement, because also there can affect the demand side of recycled textile. So these are the main initiatives I think of in terms of activity of what the Circular Economy Act could do for the textile sectors. It is possible that there will be other initiatives, or I mean, this has to be shaped also following the public consultation, because we usually look very careful at what we receive from this consultation, and some of other activities already included there might also affect textile and think of, or others new could be included in the meantime. So I really invite you all to go the website and reply to the open public consultation, because it's going to be very useful and helpful for us. So I hope I replied to this question, but I don't think I can say more about this forthcoming initiative.
Thanks a lot, but I think you said what we were hoping for you to say, to kind of give an overview of how it affects and how not, and the chance for people to provide input still. And I think, for example, I talk a lot to the companies, and the need for harmonization of the EPR is what everybody's asking for, as level a playing field as possible. So that's one of the issues to be discussed. So we now start with a Q&A to you, Vincenzo. There's lots and lots of questions, so we cannot deal with all of them, but I'll ask Marie-Jeanne to come in again with the first one that we have identified together. So Marie-Jeanne, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Vincenzo. So there is one question which is kind of linking the two topics that we were having in the panel, so ESPR and EPR. And the question is, what are the next steps for the implementing act setting the eco-modulation rules of EPR fees? So what is going to happen on this front?
Yeah, I touched upon this aspect in replying to the first question of Lars. So yes, the two initiatives are strictly linked. Also in the legal text, they are clearly linked. So at the moment, the colleagues that are in the same directorate where I'm working are in collaboration with the JRC finalizing the study on the sustainable criteria for apparels. And once the study is finalized, they will work on the delegated act, and they aim to have it published, adopted, hopefully on the first quarter of 2027. On the basis of the sustainable criteria that will be selected, that included in the delegated act, we will be working on an implementing act that will look at the methodology, at the way on how the EPR modulation should be modulated, taking into account the sustainability criteria. And in addition, we may also, depending on the outcomes of the study on the delegated act, we may look also at additional criteria. As I was telling before, there was a strong call from member states to look also at commercial practices that lead to an overgeneration of waste textile, and this is namely ultra fast fashion, which is a very sensitive and delicate aspect because we all want to address this issue. I mean, we want to achieve a more sustainable textile sector, but we have to be conscious of having laws that are well focused and not affecting also companies that are producing sustainably their products. So that's going to be a very challenging task we have, but we hope that we can make it. And I don't really know about the timing because we have to wait for all these steps. We might also start in advance, but for the final adoption of our implementing act, we have to wait for the adoption of the delegated act because those, as it's also stated in the final text that was approved yesterday by the Parliament, they are closely linked, and the reasons for this close link is what I explained before, because we count on their work to have clear identified sustainable criteria that will help eco-modulating the APR fees.
Thanks a lot, Vincenzo. I have a follow-up question. Some people are asking in the questions, what about the global south here? That you know, our used textiles are traded intensively from one country to another. Will the fees stay in Europe, or will part of the fees be able to go to other places where they're handling the end? What's the solution there?
Yeah, there are obviously we cannot set up in EU EPR schemes in other countries. In other countries, we don't regulate other countries except the one that are in the EU. So this we cannot do. I think to reply to this question, we had to look at two pieces of legislation. One is the Waste Framework Directive with the APR schemes, and the other is the Waste Shipment Regulations. As I said before, what we want to do here is that, and this is also responding to many of the requests from third countries, that we don't want to kill the second-hand market in third countries, because the second-hand market of European used textile, it's very helpful for because for many households in third countries, because it's affordable, it's cheap, and it's usually in good conditions. So that we don't want to do, but we want to be sure that what we ship outside the EU, it's really second-hand textile that is fit for use, that is not waste. So for these reasons, in the Waste Framework Directive, we put the obligations to have pre-sorting requirements to ship textile that is assessed as fit for use. On the other side, we have the Waste Shipment Regulation that makes sure that the countries that will receive our waste have the capacity to treat the waste, to manage the waste in an environmental soundly way. So these two pieces of regulation, they go very hand in hand, because one is complement the others. It's weird to say that the Waste Framework Directive is looking at used textile second-hand, but and not at the waste ones. But this is because we sort of give the requirements for being sure that the textile is fit for use, and the waste shipping regulation, it's about the waste that is shipped. So the two things together should alleviate part of the problem that are facing some countries, some third countries outside the EU. It's not only that, but at least this is where we can start working on. And once we explain how these two things work, apparently stakeholders from third countries are accepting these new rules. So let's see how it will work in practice. It's not easy task because it implies very different aspects, from waste, from giving affordable textile to households in third countries. So hope it will work. I'm quite confident that it will work well.
Thanks a lot. And on that, I also want to actually congratulate the Commission on having put these two pieces of legislation in place in a very, very short time. It's very few, not many years ago since first reports were published about all this, and already now that the EU countries have put together a piece of legislation to try to regulate it in the best way, so that we handle what we can handle best in Europe, and that what goes to Asia and Africa goes for the purposes it's meant to go to recycling and to reuse. So I think let's hope it all works well, and if there are some challenges along the way, I guess we have to adjust a little bit as we go along. So thanks a lot to you, Vincent. So there's a lot of questions in the chat. So if you have time before you leave the meeting to just have a look and see if you can answer any of those or make comments, it will be very helpful. So with that,
I can just see that there will be no ban on export of textile, because I read somewhere somebody was calling for a ban on export textile. We are just regulating. It's second-hand or waste textile.
Exactly.
Thank you.
We're regulating this to the best possible way we can.
Exactly. Have a nice.
So with that, I want to bring in our last speaker, which is Thomas Allman from Reuse, where he's the vice president, to have some closing remarks. Welcome, Thomas. I also have a few questions for you, and one is basically, so looking at all these points from this discussion, so what do you think are the most important challenges in the textile systems, and how do we solve them, and what can be done? So the word is yours, please.
Thank you very much in first place for this really interesting deep dive and this inspiring meeting, and for giving me the opportunity to speak the clothing remarks here. To answer your question in a short way, I would like to make 4 main points from the social perspective. First, we face a real textile crisis, and this crisis is real and is structural. Fast fashion and its harmful commercial practices are flooding the markets with products that often have no value for reuse or recycling. This overload threatens the long-lasting and well-functioning second-hand systems that our partners, the social enterprises, have built over many years. Second, we've heard it, we still lack the necessary infrastructure for textile recycling. There are no solution, no capacities to deal with this, and there is no demand for recycled products yet. Without this, many textiles cannot be treated in a sustainable way. Third, we need to stabilize and support good practices. And the second-hand market led by the social enterprises in Europe is such a good practice, and it's in place. It already provides social value, local jobs, and environmental benefits. But these systems are right now under this crisis, under pressure. They are sensitive, and so they need the political support right now. Finally, and I think this is a really crucial point from my point of view, textiles are not just another waste stream. They are special. It's a social waste stream, and within this fact, there's a huge opportunity, because we will need to engage the citizens of Europe if we want to build up a circularity for textiles. So we must not look at textiles only in terms of waste management and recycling. It's much more, it's social, and the priority goal must be to maximize reuse, better local reuse. So to sum up, the crisis of fast fashion is real, the missing recycling infrastructure, the risk of seeing textile only as a waste or a recycling purpose, and the need to empower social reuse markets that are in place, that are the key challenges we must address together right now.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for also highlighting the crisis in all of this and how it relates to all of us. This is what we wear every day, and this is so close to us. Before we end, I would like to ask you, do you think there's any opportunity for the Circular Economy Act to kind of come in with something on this to help solve it? Because everybody's saying there is a big crisis now, we have to act, and a lot of things are being implemented. Is there something that the Circular Economy Act could possibly do on top of everything else going on, or how do you see this?
So as I mentioned, we need support. The infrastructure in Europe that is in place needs support, and we need this infrastructure to build up more to achieve better goals. But let me answer it also maybe in 3 key points. First of all, we need these EPR schemes, but they have to really put in place that they work for high quality collection and local reuse. We need full cost coverage and funding in line with the waste hierarchy. That's really important. We should set clear reuse targets in Europe and make sure social enterprises can continue their role in collection and reuse. I mean, this is about ownership of the material collected and guaranteed access to the waste stream. I think this is really important. At the same time, we also need inclusive governance of the system, so giving a seat to the table to social actors. Second, we need, when it comes to national implementation of all these principles that were mentioned, we need really, it is not enough if it's only rules on paper. We need strong national action so that these principles become reality across Europe. And so we must tackle the root cause of the textile crisis, and this is fast fashion. I think eco-modulation of EPR fees is important. Eco-design is also important criteria, but it should really put in place as a tool to put strong penalties on harmful commercial practices. And producers who place long-lasting and sustainable products on the market should be rewarded. And those who fuel waste should pay more. And yeah, to conclude, if you want a social, fair and sustainable textile system, and there's the opportunity right now, we need strong EPR with a focus on reuse, effective national implementation and clear measures against fast fashion. And only then we will create real and full social environmental value.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for these very, very strong closing words that also summarized what some of the others have been said. This has been a tour de force into all the challenges and the solutions on textiles. We've come a long way. There's a lot more to be done, and it has to be done very, very, very quickly and very soon. This is what everybody's saying. So with those words, I would like to thank everybody. I would like to thank the Economic and Social Committee, the stakeholder platform, the leadership group with Mary Shan and the others, all the speakers who took time today, and everybody who joined. It was really, really a pleasure to have this really rewarding discussion with all of you. So see you next time, and have a good day, everybody. Thanks so much.